Hey everyone, this is Goblin Game MTG. I figured as a new channel, probably the best thing I could do was start with an introductory video of sorts. So yeah, and I think part of that I will probably go over the current state of like the first deck I ever built, just because it's relevant. So when I was a kid, I was big into Pokemon, and I didn't really play the game. I played a little bit of TCG on the Game Boy, but that was about it. Got into Yu-Gi-Oh for a while. May have played a couple of games here and there. Played the Eternal Duo on the Game Boy Advance, but again, never really played the actual game itself outside of a couple games at a local wallpaper and flooring store called Beaver's Wallpaper back when I lived in Florida. And of course, that was just a bunch of kids who barely knew what they were doing. They let me use the god cards. Anyways, quit that at some point after all my good cards got stolen at a summer camp. So I said, all right, back to Pokemon. Still never played it. Um, I think at some point I'd known about Magic, but I'd never messed with it. And then I started playing Pathfinder, uh, and the group there was a bunch of people I knew for the most part, and a bunch of them played Magic, and they tried to get me into it, and I bought like a pack of one of the Ravnica packs for 2018. I think it was the yellow one. I can never remember which one is which, but it was a pack of Core 2019 and one of the Ravnicas. And I didn't really understand anything I opened. The only thing of interest I really got was a foil thought erasure, but not knowing anything about Magic, pulling a 20-cent foil in common, I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess. And I just kind of didn't really care about it. But um, at some point, like I met my now girlfriend. She's been playing Magic for a really long time, and she tried to get me into it. And I was still kind of on the fence from past experience, but uh, I was sold on Magic due to one very specific card, and that was good old Goblin Game. Cameras, of course, choosing not to focus very well. But as soon as I saw Goblin Game for the first time, I was like, "Oh, hold on a second. This is completely different." And learning about like the existence of Commander and whatnot helped too, because the only thing I knew about Magic was it was a combo heavy game like Yu-Gi-Oh, and to me Yu-Gi-Oh was just really boring because you win, and if the game lasts more than 3 turns, it's who cares. But uh, learning about Commander and how that format worked, I was very quickly sold with, again, learn about Goblin Game, which makes you and your opponents each hide numbers of objects from each other, and truly just an absolutely absurd card to exist as a non-silver border. So, uh, yeah. So the first deck, yeah. So yeah, I mean, so that was about 2021. I started getting into Magic right about when Modern Horizons 2 came out, and I opened a bunch of that. Got to open a handful of collector boosters, and I I opened 2 Scalding Tarns, a foil retro frame or etched foil retro frame that I sold because this deck used to just be a Carter deck, and I was like, I'm not playing blue. I'm never going to need that Scalding Turn. Now it's, of course, a Grixis deck, and uh, there is now a Scalding Tarn. I managed to open an extended art at some point, but I constantly kick myself for selling that Etch foil. But yeah, so it started off as Carter deck, and it was built around Conjurer's Closet to flicker and Cranko to get a bunch of goblin tokens on the field. It was not very good at the start, and I would argue it's probably still not very good because this is very much a deck where I'm pretty sure the land base is too small, and the effects I chose to run in here are just a lot of silly things that really appeal to me. Commander, Nico Bolas the Ravager. I don't know that I'm sold on this guy still being the commander. I like the ETB that makes opponents discard a card, and I like that he is a planeswalker commander that isn't a planeswalker commander. So you can at least play with him as an actual creature instead of being punished for using a planeswalker. Goblin Game. Uh, Tidal Barracuda is. I really love this card. I like that it's Leyline of Anticipation for everyone unless it's your turn. It's really silly, and it's one of the only the deck has a couple different ideas for win cons. The Time Warp loop pretty much relies on Tidal Barracuda existing on the field in order for me to do it. Cranko, he's Cranko. We all know what he does. Uh, oh, I guess Folk Command Tower. Um, so this was up there as like one of the first MTG singles I bought was the Increasing Vengeance Strixhaven Archive because uh, I'll admit at the time I didn't know who Nahiri was. I just knew that the lady on the card looked like my girlfriend. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll get that card. Especially after I looked up what it did and I was like, oh, that's funny. Leyline of the Void, which I think this is one that I bought from my LGS, but I've opened a bunch of Time Spiral Remastered, so I've got like at least one more of these in retro frame, which is pretty nice. Counterspell, Aqueducts. I really like the unglued lands. They have one of the best looking frames, in my opinion. Uh, I've spread them out through my decks. I think that's surprising I didn't put the swamp in here. I have an Elden Ring themed deck that I'll go over in a later video. That's the one that I think has the swamp in it. There's the Scalding Tarn. I opened one collector booster at some point and happened to get that. Horizon Stone. The deck has Mycosynthelize, which is kind of the main goal of Horizon Stone being in here, but I think having all that excess mana is kind of nice because you just do your thing. Island. Forgot that I opened a Xander's Lounge at some point. Uh, so another one of the win cons in the deck is Brash Taunter with Pariah Shield. So of course, I had to get the extended art foil version because Brash Taunter is just so funny to me. So here we go. Pendrell Flux. This is every time I seem to mention this to someone, it's almost always met with reactions where you can tell they've never seen the card. And let's be honest, it's not great because the correct answer is you just sacrifice the creature that this is attached to instead of paying its casting cost. But I'm sure you're going to have times where you can play this and you put on something really important that your opponent doesn't want to have to sack. Oh, never mind. There's the swamp. Uh, I'm not going to get any more expensive a Soul Ring than this unless I somehow get the money to be able to get the DCI promo version where it's the modern frame with this art. I really can't stand the new art of Soul Ring, and I pretty much refuse to use it unless it's that foil retro frame promo they put out. Swamp, Island, Baton of Morale. I have 4 copies of this that keep spreading around in random little decks because banding is funny, and with Brash Taunter, it lets you redirect all of the trample damage back to him. Uh, is it good? No. This is an awful, awful use of banding, but it's funny. Uh, so I've got a scroll rack in here, which I know it's, one of the actual good cards in the deck. There's a card somewhere up later in the deck that interacts really, really nice with scroll rack, and it's great that with how cheap that one is and this one, you can get turn 3, you can just start shuffling through your hand for 2 mana. It's pretty nice. Uh, Also one of the first cards I ever bought, Jester's Cap. I saw the art and immediately I had to read it, and then I read what it did, and I was completely sold. I really love the old days of Magic where they were just going wild with things they print. So I've got Bubbling Beebles. I found this in the bulk box at my former LGS, and not the foil. I found just the regular card, but again, I love these little freaks, and the effect was really funny. The Enchantment Walk was a really funny effect, and I actually have a Nira deck I built that is not a Blightsteel Colossus deck. Uh, I won my first commander, like first full-on 4-player commander game with the Nira deck, thanks to Bubbling Beebles specifically. So I was pretty satisfied with that. Orchard, uh, I just think Squee's funny. I do have Eldrazi Monument in here, so of course Squee is the perfect target for that because you just sack him and recast him. City of Brass, it's City of Brass. Power Sink, truly just awful counter spell where you just determine how much do you want to force your opponent to pay. Is it good? No, but it's funny. Goldboard Mountain. Uh, I don't think I opened this swamp. I have an unhinged swamp that I did open myself, but I might have just bought this one for the deck. So Price of Glory is a card that I didn't know existed until I stumbled across a Magic Online strategy guide from 2003, uh, which incidentally has a section on Goblin Game, and its suggestion is if you draft it, do everything you can to not take it yourself. It's so that made me like Goblin Game even more. But Price of Glory, I've got Ancient Runes in here, which damages everyone for however many artifacts they control on their upkeep. Oh, wait, that's not related to this at all. But that was also in the guide. I just thought when they're forcing people to destroy lands, it just stops blue decks. Final passage. Opened to fairly recently. Uh, I don't know if he necessarily does anything in here. He's kind of a backup for uh, Tidal Barracuda. He might be getting moved to a different deck at some point. I think I had a new deck idea that he would work well in. Apathy. I love to pick up the Phil Foglio art cards. And again, I love the weird, just awful blue floodgate type effects that they used to make back in the day. It's time. Um, yeah, I know. Borderless Foil Lightning Greaves. I just really wanted it for the deck. Uh, I actually picked up one of these. I'm glad I picked up this nice foil Rush Flame Helm of the Host when I did, because I've heard they're climbing back up already. So I have an Italian non-foil copy of this. I think cost me $16 back when I originally got. So getting this for 8 was pretty nice, and I love these things. There's another card that specifically I like to use Helm of the Host with that I'll get to later. Crystal Grotto. Slow motion again. Just awful blue floodgate type enchantment. Um, but I do like that it comes back to your hand when it's done. Reality Chip. I've somehow pulled 3 of these things. None of them foil. One regular, one extended art, and the showcase one. I like the effect. It's fun. Swamp. It's oh, lightning bolt. Oof! Just knocked over my entire pile. So there is just a regular mountain behind this, but I had a binder of Yu-Gi-Oh cards from one of my cousins that they had just gotten rid of, and they had a Legend of Blue Eyes mountain in there, but the top layer of it was like peeled halfway back, and I figured, well, it can't hurt it anymore, so peeled it off, put it in there because I thought it was a funny idea. Swamp. God, I love Mersine. It has 4 arts, but this is my favorite of the arts because he knows how upsetting he's making you. Uh, it's just it just takes you have to pay the creature's casting cost 3 times in order to remove a net counter, and when they're all gone, you can finally untap it. Just awful. So Ancient Runes, it's there for Mycosynth Lattice, Brash Taunter, and Pariah's Shield. Basically, each of my opponents gets hurt for everything they have on the field, and then I get to hurt one of my opponents with Brash Taunter for every artifact on my field. Um, I had Alexi's Cloak in here for a while, and then I finally picked up some copies of Diplomatic Community since it's just better. Alexi's Cloak, you may not be able to cast it at Flash, but it's harder to get rid of it itself. Vandal Blast is Vandal Blast. Eldrazi Monument, it's Eldrazi Monument. Boilerworks, Island. Again, I had like an Italian Conjurer's Clause. I finally bothered to pick up a nice English foil copy for my main deck. I had a regular Stranglehold in here, but stumbled across this Judge promo that came out, and it was like $6, and I think the regular one cost me over 10 when I originally bought it. So I had to jump on this, and it was nice because I wanted to Stranglehold in a different deck anyway, so I got to move that. Tuk Rebel Fort, it's a wall that grants haste. Uh, I have opened so many Sensei's Divining Top borderless from Devil Masters, it's ridiculous. So I mean, hey, it's a good card. You're not complaining. So Perplexing Chimera is a card that my girlfriend introduced me. She runs a Sphinx deck, and she has this in here. And when I was like with my original deck, when this was still a Carter deck, uh, she exchanged this for Crystalline Giant because had given her the Crystalline Giant gave her problems on the previous game. But I already had the Helm out. I slapped on the Chimera, and the game became unplayable because no one could cast a spell anymore. Yeah, it was just a 2-player game, but I don't think it would have been any better in a multiplayer game. So I want to build a Broodclad deck that has this and Helm of the Host and Kranko in it just to cause so many problems. Archaeomancer for infinite time warp loops, an Italian time warp. I had the Strixhaven Mystical Archive, not the Japanese version. I had a Japanese printing of the normal version in here, but I want the original art. I like to get the original copies when I can. Croesus Catacombs, I know the layer lands aren't great. I like them a lot. I think they're neat. I like that you don't even have to like return an untapped land to your hand. I like them. They're fun triomes. Rings of Brighthearth, I honestly don't remember what this does in here, but it's funny. Mountain Ardent Elementalist, just a backup for Archaeomancer. Everyone's favorite card, Sun Quan, the horsemanship guy. Probably, I would assume, more well known due to Posty having a copy in his deck, but I forget how I learned about him. I think maybe I was just looking at Three Kingdoms cards and learning what horsemanship did. And find there was a guy who just gives your entire field horsemanship. I had to get a copy of him. Uh, Thankfully, at least at the time, because I picked up a Japanese one. He's near mid. He's like he's in really good condition, but he was like half the cost of English copies because he was Japanese. Um, and fun fact about Sun Quan, I looked up the real life guy that the card is based on, and it makes perfect sense that he's the horsemanship guy because the real life Sun Quan spent the entirety of the Three Kingdoms era just he really tried to get horses for his entire army. Everyone told him it was a bad idea, and he finally got them. I think he lost the immediate next conflict he had afterwards, but I mean, hey, he stuck to his guns. Mountain, Chaos Warp, again, Phil Foglio art. This was one of the cards I actually wanted the most from Double Masters. Still missing my top twos. I really want the Dockside, not because it's Dockside, although I have been wanting a copy of Dockside since I started, but because it's got Doug Schuler art, and I love Doug Schuler's stuff. And of course, number one is the Borderless Imperial Seal because I love that art too. It's so good. Swamp. Bouncing Beebles because, of course, I had to have both of the original Beebles in here in foil. Raised Dead, it's an okay recursion card. Again, I love the way old cards are phrased. Bring one creature from your graveyard to your hand is such a silly way of phrasing that. Goblin Hero. Yeah, he's a 3 mana 2/2 vanilla. But look at that art. It is just. Why did they do that? I mean, it's Mark Teeden. It's great art, but. Whew, that's a guy. Uh, Ovinomancer, I didn't know about this guy until Dominaria Remastered. I have a foil Time Spiral copy coming in. I love that if you have haste, you can just activate this guy in response to his own ETB and just it's I don't know, funny card. An Inevitable Trail, again, same thing. I know, suspend you have to wait 3 turns to pop this off. You'd be better off just playing Betrayal, or I think that's what's called the 4 mana sorcery from one of the older blocks. It does the exact same thing, but it's funny. Island, Swamp. Oh, right, one of the nice boards. Phyrexian Altar. Uh, haven't gotten the borderless from Double Masters yet. Do have an etch, but that sits in my binder because I don't want to play it. Uh, of course, Mycosynth It's we all know what Mycosynth does. Horizon Shield. Already talked about it. Island. Again, one of I think this is like the third single I ever bought. My LGS had a nice white border demonic tutor. Uh, The only other tutor I own is a Grim tutor that I happen to open from a Core 21 pack, and that's it. I I don't own tutors. I don't really buy a lot of them, but what are you gonna do? Arcane Bombardment. If I get off the infinite time warp loop, this thing just starts, it starts casting a lot of spells. I haven't gotten to do it yet, but one day maybe. Island. Rethink. I love these like bad counter spells. This is absolutely my favorite counter spell because I know it's useless in the late game, but in the early game, when someone casts their commander the instant they get the most mana, they're not getting their commander, or really just anything big. The instant they have 8 mana to drop something, no, it goes away. Uh, Darksteel Garrison, I love a lot of what they did with Future Sight, and I don't have the best lighting to show how nice this foil looks in person. It looks so good, but I love equipment for lands as an idea, and I wish they would do more. Uh, Conspicuous Snoop, this used to have a lot more goblins in it. He doesn't really serve a purpose besides, I guess, sort of being a backup for um, the reality chip, but I should probably move him into a different deck. I've got another deck I'm going to build that he'd probably be a whole lot better in. Mountain. Control Magic. I mean, it's Control Magic, but again, look at that art. He, boy howdy. I love, just old Magic has something special to it. Wheel of Misfortune, again, I pulled a regular version of this. I think I pulled two regular copies out of Commander Legends. Then my girlfriend actually pulled the foil copy, and I traded with her because she's not as want to use this card as I am. And again, this is Goblin Game adjacent, so of course it had to be in the deck. Uh, everyone knows Atali. Uh, this is the only Atali I own, even though I wanted him for a long time, and that's because I refused to buy a copy of him unless I got the foil retro frame version from TSR, which I was not paying $50 for an Atali. So I may have spent more on TSR by the time I finally got him, but I got a lot of really good stuff that I'll go over in maybe later videos that made it worth it. But I just kept buying I bought one box that I managed to find for a pretty good price, and then other than that, when I was buying cards from a shop here, I would buy 4 booster packs with it with whatever order I was placing. Uh, this was the second or third best thing I pulled from those booster packs. So it's pretty good. But now I can buy more copies now that I finally pulled him. Mountain, Delina. I think Delina is really funny. She's part of why I won that game with my Mira deck, with Bubbling Beebles and Hulking Metamorph that was transformed into a Bubbling Beeble. But so here we go. Soldier of Fortune. Again, Doug Shore card. For being honest, I'm pretty sure he drew himself for this card. Uh, I found a copy of this in the bulk at my old LGS, and I just thought that was really funny that, Rings of Bright Hearth, you pay 3 mana and you make 2 people shuffle their decks, or you make one person shuffle their deck twice. It works really well with Scroll Rack, though, obviously. Turn 3, you're able to pay 3 mana, get rid of cards in your hand you don't like, and then shuffle your deck off a Soldier of Fortune. Honestly, I think for 1 mana, it's not a terrible card. Decanter of Endless Water, it's Decanter. So I found this in a secondhand shop here, and I cannot believe how wordy they decided to make this guy. I know it's old Magic and they had to super duper explain their effects, but that's a paragraph of text to just say his power and toughness are each equal to the number of non-wall creatures you control. And I love that it explains what happens if a creature leaves play. Uh, I know Ornithopter of Paradise is probably one of the less good mana dorks, but this is up there as one of the earliest cards I pulled from my from booster packs when I was buying a bunch of MH2. So I like that I've got the foil retro frame version. Darksteel Citadel. I actually managed to pull a Damnation out of my TSRs, which I have the Boros some double masters, but it's nice to have a closer to original. And took a while, but I also pulled Vesuvian Shapeshifter out of my Time Trials, which I know he's not a great card. I think morph cards are funny. I love cards that copy other things, but yeah. So I can say a lot of my decks, they're not necessarily high power. They're not tuned very well. Because I like to build stuff that I think is going to be an interesting effect. Some of the future things I'll probably go over. I've got a deck based around Piru, the Elder Dragon from Modern Horizons 2, the only one where you actually don't want to pay the casting cost again, or you don't want to pay the upkeep cost. The Elden Ring, I got to be fun show off. I got to get this Discordant Dirge put in there somewhere before I can show it off. But it's a very I don't know how functional it is. I've only gotten to play with it once or twice. It does have a Threos as the commander, but um, it's a very fun deck. It was very fun to put together too, theme wise. But yeah, so I mean, for the time being, uploads will be kind of sporadic. I'll see if I can find anything to do with shorts. I'm going to agree with POA on that one. That YouTube pushing shorts so hard is just, I don't want to do it. But hey, if I have to, I will. Maybe I'll find some more of my weird old cards that people don't know as well and show those off. But yeah, sorry, it's kind of a long video, but I figure for an introduction, uh, you got to kind of talk about your whole whatever. And hopefully in the future, maybe I'll get some boxes to open, or we'll see. So, yeah, that about does it.